So as I say, this is going to have a look through the entire decision by Judge William Duffin, who obviously decided in 2016 in favour of Brendan Dassey on his habeas corpus appeal. So we're dealing with the United States District Court, Eastern District of Wisconsin. The petitioner is Brendan Dassey versus Michael A. Dittman, who is the respondent. Michael A. Dittman, apparently he's simply the guy in charge of the jail, so he's the person at the prison, the head of the jail there. Okay, so this is the decision and order. William Duffin starts off by pointing out 1, facts and procedural history, and then this is section A, the initial investigation. Teresa Halbach, the oldest daughter of northeastern Wisconsin dairy farmers, graduated summa cum laude from the University of Wisconsin, Green Bay in 2002. By the time she was 25 years old, she was running her own photography business. Halbach's family and friends became concerned in early November 2005 after she had not been seen or heard from for a few days. Uncharacteristically, she had not stopped by her photography studio and her voicemail was full. Family, friends, and law enforcement distributed thousands of missing person posters, scoured roadside ditches in case she had had an accident, and retraced her last known activities. Searchers learned that Halbach had been photographing vehicles for Auto Trader magazine on October 31st, 2005. After photographing 2 vehicles at 2 residences that day, Halbach was scheduled to photograph a minivan that was for sale at the Avery salvage yard. Halbach had not been seen or heard from since. On Saturday, November the 5th, 2005, volunteer searchers, with the permission of the owners of the property, undertook a search of this Avery salvage yard. The salvage yard property was expansive, spanning 40 acres and containing roughly 4,000 vehicles. Amidst the thousands of salvaged vehicles, partly covered by tree branches, fence posts, boxes, plywood and auto parts, a pair of searchers found Halbach's 99 Toyota RAV4. As a result of this discovery, investigators obtained a search warrant for the entire salvage yard property, which encompassed roughly 15 buildings and included residences of various members of the extended Avery family, garages and other 8 buildings. The search was extensive, involving many different agencies, dozens of law enforcement personnel and dozens more volunteer firefighters, along with dive teams for the ponds and dogs trained to detect blood and human remains. The search lasted a week and covered not only all of the buildings, but also each of the 4,000 salvaged vehicles, some of which had been crushed and required specialised equipment to inspect. Stephen Avery, a son of the owners of the salvage yard, lived in a residence on the property. Investigators recovered 2 firearms from a gun rack above Avery's bed and a key to Halbach's RAV4 found in Avery's bedroom. In a burn barrel and a roughly 4-foot by 6-foot burn pit near Avery's residence, investigators located charred human bone and tooth fragments. Also recovered from the burn areas were the burnt remnants of electronics, a zipper and rivets from a woman's jeans. In a vehicle, In the salvage yard, a searcher found the license plates that had been on Halbach's RAV4. Subsequent investigation determined that the recovered human remains were those of an adult female who was no more than 30 years old. Analysis of the skull fragments determined that she had been shot twice in the head. DNA testing of tissue remaining on one of the bone fragments was consistent with Halbach's DNA profile, with the chance that the DNA was from a source other than Halbach being 1 in a billion. Additionally, investigators determined that the burned electronics were from a mobile phone, personal organizer and digital camera of the same makes and models that Halbach was known to have owned. Halbach was seen wearing jeans shortly before she arrived at the Avery property on October 31st, and the rivets recovered from the burn area were from jeans of the same brand Halbach was known to own. Multiple witnesses reported seeing a large bonfire in the burn pit outside Avery's residence on October 31st. Forensic examination of Halbach's RAV4 revealed multiple blood stains. A roughly 6-inch blood stain in the rear cargo area by the wheel well displayed a pattern consistent with having been the result of bloody hair. The DNA profile developed from this stain and others in the cargo area, including along the plastic threshold of the cargo area, the door to the cargo area, and a metal piece along the opening of the cargo area was identified as being that of Halbach. Other small blood stains in the passenger compartment of Halbach's RAV4, just to the right of the ignition, on a CD case, on a metal panel between the rear seats and the vehicle cargo area, on the driver's seat, on the front passenger seat, and on the floor by the center console, all matched Stephen Avery's DNA. Avery's DNA was also detected on the hood latch of Halbach's RAV4 and on the key to the RAV4 that was found in Avery's bedroom. Investigators learned that Halbach had taken photographs at the Avery property on 5 prior occasions. Avery called Auto Trader on the morning of October 31st, 2005 and requested that, quote, the same girl who had been out here before, end quote, come and take pictures of a vehicle that was for sale. Just before 2:30 p.m, Halbach contacted Auto Trader and said that she was on her way to the Avery property. At roughly 2:30 or 2:45 p.m, a neighbour of Avery's saw Halbach photographing a minivan and then go to Avery's residence. The neighbour left home at about 3 o'clock and observed Halbach's RAV4 still outside Avery's residence, but did not see Halbach. When he returned home at about 5 p.m, Halbach's RAV4 was no longer there. Of course, the neighbour being nephew Bobby Dassey. Avery was arrested and charged with Halbach's murder. Interesting, isn't it, when you sort of put it in those very simplistic terms, the facts of the case as we know it. Obviously, Judge Duffin is not going to go into the details about the fact that the key was found by the Manitrock Sheriff's Department, the very department that should not have been in there. So, you know, when you read through the facts, remember, Kathleen Zellner was not interested in taking on the case at all to begin with, because just like anybody else, she would have read what was known about the situation and said, well, all that evidence points to Stephen Avery. And you can understand why, you know, people in Wisconsin who have never even seen Making a Murderer, they probably don't want to because they've heard that it paints Wisconsin in a bad way, and Manitowoc, they're quite happy to go with the idea that there is, they're they're quite happy to go along with the idea that there's nothing nothing wrong with what happened in Stephen and Brendan's case, that they're just guilty. End of story. So as I say, in that opening there, we don't get anything other than a presentation of the basic facts. Let's carry on then with B, the investigation of Brendan Dassey. He wrote, "The investigation regarding Avery continued as he awaited trial. On February 20th, 2006, investigators interviewed Kayla Avery, Stephen Avery's teenage niece. Although the interview focused on information related to Stephen Avery, at the end of the interview, Kayla stated that her cousin, Brendan Dassey, had been, quote, acting up lately, close quote. When asked to explain, Kayla stated that Dassey would stare into space and start crying uncontrollably, and that he had lost roughly 40 pounds recently. Based on this information from Kayla, and because a witness reported seeing Dassey at the bonfire with Avery around 7:30, 7:45 on the evening of October 31st, investigators decided that they needed to re-interview Dassey. Dassey, like Avery's other relatives, had been questioned earlier in the investigation. Dassey was 16 years old and, aside from this investigation, had never had any contacts with law enforcement. He was described as a, quote, very shy boy, unquote, who, again, quote, doesn't say much, close quote. In school, he typically followed rules and did not get into trouble. He also suffered from certain intellectual deficits. His IQ was assessed as being in the low average to borderline range. He was a, quote, slow learner with, quote, really, really bad grades. Specifically, he had difficulty understanding certain aspects of language and expressing himself verbally. He also had difficulties in the social aspects of communication, such as understanding and using non-verbal cues, facial expressions, eye contact, body language, tone of voice. Testing also revealed that he was extreme when it came to social introversion, social alienation, and especially social avoidance. As a result, he received special education services at school. Calumet County Sheriff's investigator Mark Wiegert and Wisconsin Department of Justice Special Agent Tom Fassbender met with Dassey on February the 27th, 2006 in a conference room at Dassey's high school, where they spoke for about an hour. After the interview, Wiegert and Fassbender contacted the prosecuting attorney, who requested that they create a better record of the interview than the poor quality audio cassette recording they had. They made arrangements to interview Dassey again later that same day at a local police station that was equipped with video recording equipment. Wiegert and Fassbender contacted Dassey's mother, Barb Yander, who went to the school. She and Dassey then went with the officers to the police station. According to Wiegert and Fassbender, Barb Yander declined their offer to be present for the interview and instead remained in the waiting area of the police station. However, according to Barb Yander, the investigators discouraged her from joining Dassey for the interview. I think we tend to know who we would believe on that, but anyway. During this second February the 27th interview, which lasted less than an hour, Dassey acknowledged being present at the October 31st, 2005 bonfire with Avery, and that he saw body parts in the fire. Fassbender met with Dassey again in the evening on February the 27th. Dassey told Fassbender that he got bleach on his pants after helping Avery clean the floor of Avery's garage on October 31st. Believing that he knew more than what he had thus far told investigators, Wiegert and Fassbender obtained permission from Yander to speak to Dassey again 2 days later, on March the 1st, 2006. According to Barb Yander, the investigators never asked her if she wanted to be present for this interview. The investigators picked Dassey up at his high school in the morning on March the 1st. After they advised Dassey of his constitutional rights under Miranda, he agreed to speak with them. Wiegert and Fassbender then went with Dassey to his house, located on the Avery family property near Avery's home, where Dassey gave them the bleach-stained jeans he previously mentioned. On the way to the sheriff's department, Wiegert and Fassbender asked Dassey if he wanted anything to eat or drink. He declined. The March 1st, 2006 interview was the fourth time the police had questioned Dassey in 48 hours. The interview began shortly before 11 a.m. It was conducted in a soft room, a room in the Manitowoc County Sheriff's Department that contained a small couch, 2 soft chairs and lamps, rather than a brick-walled interrogation room with a hard table. The interview was video and audio recorded. No adult was present on Dassey's behalf. The interview began with Fassbender acknowledging that one reason Dassey had said he did not come forward earlier was that he was scared that he would be implicated. Fassbender stated, "I want to assure you that Mark and I both are in your corner. We're on your side." Fassbender stated that it was best if Dassey told the whole truth and not leave anything out, even if the details might be against his own interests. Fassbender continued, stating, "From what I'm seeing, I'm thinking you're all right. You're all right. Okay, you don't have to worry about things," Wiegert commented. "Honesty here, Brendan, is the thing that's going to help you, okay? No matter what you did, we can work through that, okay? We can't make any promises, but we'll stand behind you no matter what you did, okay? Because you're being the good guy here," Wiegert continued, noting that being honest was the best way to help himself out. Quote, "Honesty is the only thing that will set you free, right?" He then assured Dassey, "We pretty much know everything. That's why we're talking to you again." At the investigators' prompting, Dassey began to recount the events of October 31st, 2005. Over the next approximately 3 hours, with a roughly half-hour break, generally responding to the investigators' questions with answers of just a few hushed words, a story evolved whereby in its final iteration, Dassey implicated himself in the rape, murder and mutilation of Teresa Halbach. In the first version that Dassey told investigators on March 1st, he got off the school bus at about 3:45. When he went to his home, he saw Avery and Halbach talking on Avery's porch. Dassey said he then went inside his home, cleaned his room, played video games, ate dinner and watched TV until Avery called him requesting help with a car. At this point, Fassbender stopped Dassey and said he did not believe what Dassey was saying. Wiegert interjected, reminding Dassey to be honest and again stating, "We already know what happened. We're in your corner." Fassbender assured Dassey, "We already know what happened. Now tell us exactly. Don't lie," Wiegert said. The investigators continued to encourage Dassey to tell the story. Fassbender asked, "Whose car was in the garage?" And Wiegert followed, "We already know. Just tell us it's okay." Dassey responded, "Her Jeep." "That's right," Fassbender confirmed. After some questions about Halbach's RAV4 and the garage, the investigators proceeded to ask Dassey about what Avery showed him. Dassey eventually said that Avery showed him the knife and the rope. We get asked where Halbach was, continuing, "Come on, we know this already, be honest." "In the back of the Jeep," Dassey answered. Slowly, Dassey came to say that he first encountered Halbach when Avery showed him her body, deceased, bound with rope, and wearing a black shirt, a ripped t-shirt and pants, in the back of her RAV4. He said that Avery told him that he had stabbed her and raped her because she had upset him. The investigators pressed Dassey for more details, with Wiegert reminding him, "Remember, we already know, but we need to hear it from you." Dassey told the investigators that he and Avery took Halbach out of the back of the RAV4 and put her in the fire pit where a bonfire was already burning. With further prompting and assurances from the investigators that they already knew the details, Dassey added details. He told them, for example, that he was outside riding his bike after school when he heard a woman screaming for help inside Avery's home. When Fassbender said he thought that Dassey went over to Avery's house, Dassey stated that he rode his bike to get the mail and, after noticing that there was mail for Avery, he went to Avery's house. Avery answered the door, Dassey gave him the mail and he left. Wiegert again challenged Dassey's story, stating, "It's okay, Brendan, we already know. And soon thereafter, you went inside, didn't you?" Dassey nodded yes. Dassey then said that he knocked 3 times before Avery finally came to the door, sweaty, and invited Dassey into the kitchen. Once inside Avery's home, Dassey could see down the hallway to Avery's bedroom, where Halbach was naked, handcuffed to Avery's bed, and screaming for help. Dassey said that Avery asked him if he wanted a soda. Dassey accepted. As Dassey drank his soda, Avery said that he wanted to continue raping Halbach and asked Dassey if he wanted to as well. Dassey said he, quote, wasn't aged and, quote, I ain't old enough to have a kid yet. But Avery continued to pressure Dassey and took him into the bedroom. Dassey denied doing anything further, but Wiegert assured Dassey, we know what happened, it's okay. Dassey again denied doing anything. Wiegert continued, it's not your fault, he makes you do it. Dassey responded, he told me to do her. Dassey eventually came to say that he raped Halbach while Avery watched from the doorway. When it was over, Avery congratulated Dassey and the two went to watch TV in another room for about 15 minutes. The investigators asked Dassey what happened next. Dassey said he told Avery that he had to leave. Wiegert responded, Brendan, be honest. You were there when she died and we know that. Don't start lying now. We know you were there. We already know. Don't lie to us now. Okay, come on. Dassey said that Avery then stabbed Halbach in the stomach. Wiegert continued to prompt Dassey. He did something else. We know that. By this time, the investigators knew from forensic examination of the recovered skull fragments that Halbach had been shot at least once in the head. They would learn later that Halbach had been shot at least twice in the head. Dassey responded that Avery tied up Halbach. Wiegert continued, we know he did something else to her. What did he do to her? Dassey responded that Avery choked Halbach until she went unconscious, at which point Dassey got the handcuff key, unlocked Halbach's hands and helped Avery tie her up with rope. Dassey initially said that Halbach was unconscious when they tied her up, but then he said that as they bound her, she was screaming for Avery to stop, and that Avery told her he would not. that she should shut her mouth and that he was going to kill her. Wiegert prompted Dassey. What else did he do to her? We know something else was done. Tell us. And what else did you do? Come on, something with the head, Brendan. Dassey did not answer Wiegert's questions, leading to further questioning and prompting from Wiegert and Fassbender. Fassbender said, what he made you do, Brendan, we know he made you do something else. We have the evidence, Brendan. We just need you to be honest with us. To this, Dassey responded that he cut off her hair. After a few short questions about the hair, Fassbender moved on. What else was done to her head? Dassey responded that he punched her. What else? What else? Wiegert prompted. Fassbender continued, he made you do something to her, didn't he? So he would feel better about not being the only person, right? Dassey responded that he cut her throat. Again, Wiegert continued, what else happens to her in the head? After a couple more prompts and a pause, Fassbender said, we know, we just need you to tell us. Dassey said, that's all I can remember. Wiegert responded, all right, I'm just going to come out and ask you, who shot her in the head? He did, answered Dassey. When asked why he did not say that, Dassey said he couldn't think of it. We'll leave it there at that rather iconic moment in the interrogation, and we'll carry on. We're about 13 pages through, so I reckon this will take maybe about 8 or 9 parts. We'll wait and see. We'll catch you again soon for part 2 of the Judge William Duffin decision. Bye for now.